The barn roof caved in sometime last winter. Nobody came to fix it. She stands in the frozen mud where 40 cattle once sheltered and counts what her husband left her: a mortgage, a collapsed roof, and fields gone to thistle. 6 months ago, she was a wife. Now she is a landowner of ruin. The debts came due faster than the grief did. Neighbors offer sympathy, not money. The bank offers neither. Whatever survives on this land now depends entirely on her. The fields haven't been grazed in a year. Fences lean sideways, rotted at the post. She walks them anyway, boots sinking into ground that hasn't earned a single dollar since the funeral. Owning land, she is learning, is not the same as having a farm. 12 miles down the county road, the old dairy is shutting its doors for good. It's a story repeating across the country by the 1960s. Small dairies, unable to match the scale of industrial competitors, closing one by one, their herds sold for whatever price they'll bring. Across the country through these decades, thousands of small dairies vanish this way, swallowed by consolidation, unable to compete with mechanized herds 10 times their size. For the men running this one, it's liquidation. For the widow, it's the only door still open to her. She has almost nothing to spend. So she doesn't bid on the healthy young stock the other buyers want. She waits for the cows nobody else will touch, the oldest ones, the ones already marked for the truck to the slaughterhouse. Commercial dairies typically cull their cows around 4 to 6 years old, once milk yield starts to slip below profitable margins. These animals aren't broken. They're simply no longer efficient enough for an industrial system built on constant output. For $50 a head, she buys 24 of them. Cows the industry has already written off. It's not sentiment. It's arithmetic. The only herd her empty pockets can afford is the one everyone else has given up on. The truck rattles up the lane toward the ruined farm as the sun drops low. 24 cattle, unloaded into fields with no working fences and a barn with no roof. It looks less like a rescue than a second disaster waiting to happen. She spends the first nights patching what fence she can by lantern light, driving posts into half-frozen ground alone. The cows mill in the yard, confused by unfamiliar pasture, unfamiliar smells, an unfamiliar woman who now decides everything about their lives. Within a week, one cow separates herself. Every evening, while the rest of the herd settles near the water trough, this one walks alone to the far corner of the collapsed barn, to a pile of fallen stone half buried in weeds, and simply stands there. At first she assumes it's confusion, an old animal missing whatever barn it knew before. But the cow returns to that same corner the next night and the next, refusing grain, refusing to be led back with the others, drawn to something the widow cannot yet see. 3 weeks earlier, at the auction, she stood among buyers who wanted nothing to do with the oldest stock. Younger farmers eyed heifers with years of yield left. She counted the cash in her coat pocket and asked about the animals nobody bid on. The dairy was closing after decades in business, another small operation swallowed by scale and cost. Its 24 oldest cows stood penned separately, tagged for slaughter once the gavel fell. Too old, the auctioneer said, to be worth more. Dairy cows are usually culled around 5 to 7 years old, once their milk yield dips below industrial thresholds. It has nothing to do with whether they can still produce. It is a number on a ledger, not a verdict on the animal. A cow culled for low output can often still give milk for years afterward. The waste is not in the animal. It is in a system built to measure life by efficiency alone, and to discard whatever falls short of the curve. She bid on all 24. It cost nearly everything she had left. Money meant for roof repairs, for winter feed, for anything but livestock nobody else wanted. The auctioneer barely looked up. It was the easiest sale of his day. By afternoon, the cows were hers. 24 heads of aging Holstein and Jersey stock, loaded into a borrowed trailer, bound for a farm that had not held livestock in over a decade. She did not know yet what waited in its broken corners. The farm had gone quiet years before. Fields overgrown, fences down, the barn's roof collapsed inward, under its own rot. What she saw driving up was ruin. What the cows saw, stepping down from the trailer, may have been something else entirely. One by one, they moved into the pasture, heads low, unbothered by the mess of split fence rails and standing weeds. Cattle read land differently than people do, by smell, by memory, by whatever still holds shelter and water beneath the decay. Within days, the herd had a rhythm. They grazed the low field by morning, drank from a cracked trough by noon, and gathered near the half-standing barn by dusk, all but one, who peeled away toward the ruined north corner instead. The half-standing barn itself was a warning sign, timbers black with age, a roofline sagging like a spine giving out. But structures like it were often built atop something older still, stone foundations meant to outlast the wood stacked above them. She fed the herd by hand those first nights, learning which cow favored which spot in line, which flinched at her shadow. 23 settled easily. The 24th would not come to the trough at all, no matter how she called or coaxed her. Farmers have long known cattle keep a kind of memory, for shelter, for temperature, for water they trust. A cow that refuses a full trough and a dry stall isn't being difficult. It is telling you something the trough and stall cannot. Each evening she watched the cow cross the same 40 feet of broken ground, stop at the same pile of collapsed stone, and stand there until dark. By the fourth night, the widow stopped calling her back at all and started walking toward her instead. She names her Bramble, for the scar across her flank. 23 cows graze the near pasture without complaint. Bramble alone crosses 30 feet of broken ground every evening, drawn to the same pile of collapsed stone as if pulled by something the widow can't see. Cattle are not wanderers by nature. Herd animals survive by staying close, moving together, grazing as one body. A cow that isolates herself, night after night, toward the same 6 feet of rubble is not behaving like a cow at all. The widow sets fresh grain by the rubble on the second evening, hoping to break the habit. Bramble sniffs it once and turns away. She won't touch it. She hasn't touched it since the first night she wandered there alone. There's a trough 30 yards off, fed by an old pipe, water clean and cold. Every other cow drinks there without hesitation. Bramble walks past it each night like it isn't there, straight to the stone, and stands. On the third night, the widow tries to lead her back by the halter. Bramble plants her hooves and will not move. 200 pounds heavier than the woman pulling, she simply refuses, ears back, eyes fixed on the stone pile. Farmers have long known this kind of stubbornness is rarely nothing. Livestock have alerted owners to sinkholes opening beneath pasture, to gas seeping from cracked ground, to barns about to give way, long before any human noticed. The widow begins to wonder if fear alone explains it. Cows have long memories for a single detail: a cold draft, a familiar smell of water, a shape in stone that resembles something they've stood beside before, somewhere else, long ago. By the fourth night, she stops calling Bramble back entirely. Instead, she walks toward her, lantern in hand, boots sinking in the wet grass, crossing the same 30 feet the cow has worn into a narrow, visible path. Up close, the rubble corner looks like nothing. Collapsed roof timber, moss-covered stone, the leftover skeleton of a barn wall that gave in years before she ever bought the land. Nothing here should interest a cow at all. But Bramble paws the same stone every evening, striking it with one front hoof, again and again, the way a cow paws ground before lying down. Except she never lies down. She only paws, and waits, and stares at the gap beneath it. The widow kneels beside her for the first time, close enough to feel it herself, a thin current of cold air rising from a gap no wider than a hand, cutting through the June heat like a draft from a cellar. Cold air, in the middle of summer, coming from solid ground. She has lived on farms her whole life and never felt anything like it. Not from a well, not from a cellar, not from anywhere she can explain. Cold air from a spring, channeled through stone, was once ordinary farm technology, the only refrigeration a family had before electricity reached rural land. A tunnel built for milk, not mystery, sealed for decades and forgotten by everyone but the ground itself. She returns the next morning with a shovel, a crowbar, and no plan beyond curiosity. Bramble is already there, waiting at the same stone, as though she has known all along exactly what lies just beneath it. She kneels in the dirt where Bramble stands and pries the crowbar into a gap between two stones. Cold air hits her face immediately. Real cold, cellar cold, wrong for a July morning. She freezes, crowbar still in hand, and listens. She works another hour, stone by stone, sweat soaking her collar, while her hands stay strangely cool. Each block she pulls free reveals more darkness behind it. Not a collapsed wall, but an opening, deliberate and shaped, swallowing the morning light. The last stone comes loose, and she nearly falls backward. Beneath it is not rubble, but a passage, stacked stone walls, a low ceiling, built by hands, not by collapse. Bramble doesn't flinch. She has clearly known this place her whole life. She grabs a flashlight from the truck and steps inside, ducking under a lintel stone worn smooth by generations of hands before hers. The walls are dry-fitted, no mortar, stacked with the kind of skill nobody teaches anymore. 10 feet in, she hears it. Water, not dripping, but running, steady, alive. The flashlight catches a narrow channel cut into the tunnel floor. Clear water, moving through stone that some long-dead farmer laid by hand. The tunnel opens into a small room, stone-walled and stone-roofed, built directly over the spring itself. Shelves line one side, empty now, but shaped for something specific. Crocks, pails, containers, meant to sit and stay cold. This is a dairy room, a real one, built the way farms cooled milk for 2 centuries before anyone plugged in a refrigerator. A spring house, set directly over running water to hold a temperature no summer heat could touch. She checks the water with her hand. Cold, almost painfully so, even in July. A room like this, built over a live spring, holds steady between 10 and 15 degrees Celsius, 50 to 58 Fahrenheit, every day of the year. Cold enough to slow bacteria in milk. Cold enough, in fact, to do exactly what her refrigerated bulk tank does now, just without a single watt of electricity. Farmers relied on rooms like this for 200 years before hers was ever born. She sits back on her heels and starts doing the math. 24 cows, most too old for the industrial dairy that discarded them, still capable of good milk. Milk that now has somewhere cold to sit until she can sell it. The barn above her collapsed because nobody needed a spring room once refrigeration arrived. That collapse is exactly what saved this place. No one bothered tearing it out. No one built over it. Neglect preserved what progress made obsolete. Within the week, she's hauling milk cans down the tunnel by hand, setting them into the cold channel just as some forgotten farmer once did. It isn't modern, it isn't easy, but it works, and it costs her nothing but effort. This is, by all accounts, a legend. No record ties this exact widow, this exact farm, to history. But the spring houses were real, the cold water was real, and somewhere, in 100 quiet corners of old farmland, tunnels like this still wait. Her herd survives. Her farm survives. Not because of luck, but because one stubborn old cow refused to stop walking to the same broken corner of a barn. And a woman finally stopped to ask why. Subscribe for more stories the ground still keeps.